Heavenly Stories.
Way back in ancient Israel, there was a guy named Jonah, a prophet who got direct calls from God. One sunny day, God dropped a big assignment on him. "Jonah," he said, "I need you to head to Nineveh, that big, bustling city full of folks who've lost their way. They're doing some seriously wicked stuff, and I want you to tell them to shape up or face the consequences." Now, Nineveh wasn't just any city, it was huge, like the New York City of its day, but with a reputation for being rough and godless. Jonah heard God loud and clear, but his first thought was, no way, Lord. That place is a mess, and I ain't signing up to be their preacher. See, Jonah wasn't just scared, he straight up didn't want Nineveh to get a second chance. He figured they didn't deserve God's mercy. So, instead of packing for Nineveh, Jonah decided to pull a runner. He hightailed it to the port city of Joppa, found a ship headed to Tarshish, about as far from Nineveh as you could get, and bought a ticket. Tarshish was like the Hawaii of the ancient world, a far-off escape. Jonah thought, if I'm on a boat halfway across the sea, God's gonna have to find someone else for this job. He paid the fare, hopped aboard, and probably imagined himself sipping something cool under a palm tree. But God? He's not so easily ditched. Jonah settled into the ship, maybe even feeling smug about his great escape. The boat set sail, the waves were calm, and Jonah headed below deck for a nap, thinking he'd outsmarted the Almighty. Little did he know, God was watching, and he wasn't about to let his prophet skip town without a lesson. Jonah's decision to run wasn't just a detour, it was about to turn his whole world upside down. God had a plan, and it wasn't gonna involve Tarshish. As Jonah snoozed, the sea started to churn, and the real adventure was just getting started. Out on the open water, Jonah was probably dreaming of sandy beaches when the ship started rocking. A storm came out of nowhere, and I mean a monster storm. The sky turned black, the wind howled like a freight train, and waves crashed over the deck like they were trying to swallow the ship whole. The sailors, tough guys who'd seen their share of rough seas, were freaking out. They started praying to every god they knew, tossing cargo overboard to lighten the load, hoping to keep the ship from going under. Meanwhile, Jonah's down in the hold, sleeping like a baby. Can you believe it? The ship's practically breaking apart, and this guy's catching Z's. The captain stomps down, shakes him awake, and yells, "Man, what's wrong with you? We're all praying for our lives up here, and you're snoozing. Get up and call on your God, maybe he'll save us." Jonah probably rubbed his eyes, realizing his getaway plan wasn't going so hot. The sailors, desperate for answers, started casting lots, kinda like drawing straws, to figure out who was bad luck. Guess who the lot landed on? Yup, Jonah. They crowded around him, demanding, "Who are you? What's your deal? Did you do something to bring this storm on us?" Jonah took a deep breath and fessed up. "I'm a Hebrew," he said. "I worship the Lord, the God who made the sea and the land. And, I'm kinda running from him." The sailors' jaws dropped. They're like, "You're running from that God? The one who controls this sea? Dude, what were you thinking?" Now, the storm's getting worse, and the sailors are out of ideas. Jonah, feeling the weight of his choices, says, "Look, this is on me. If you throw me overboard, the storm will stop. I'm the problem." The sailors didn't want to do it, they weren't heartless, but the waves kept pounding, and they had no choice. They prayed to Jonah's God, asking for forgiveness, and then, with a heave, they tossed Jonah into the raging sea. Instantly, the wind died down, the waves calmed, and the sailors stood there, stunned, offering prayers of thanks to the God they'd just met. But Jonah? He was about to meet someone, or something, else entirely. So there's Jonah, flailing in the sea, probably thinking he's done for. The water's cold, the waves are pulling him under, and he's gotta be wondering if this is the end. But God wasn't finished with him yet. Out of the deep, something massive surfaces, a huge fish, bigger than anything Jonah's ever seen. Before he can even scream, gulp. The fish swallows him whole. No teeth, no chewing, just straight down into its belly. Jonah's not fish food, though, he's alive, sitting in the slimy, dark insides of this creature, probably gagging from the smell. Now, imagine being Jonah. You're in the belly of a fish, surrounded by who knows what, with no light, no exit, and no clue what's next. It's like being stuck in the world's worst camping trip with no s'mores. For 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah's in there, and let me tell you, he's got time to think. He starts praying, pouring his heart out to God. He's like, Lord, I messed up big time. I'm in over my head, literally. But you're the God who saves, and I'm crying out to you from the belly of this beast. Jonah's prayer is raw and real. He talks about how he felt the waves crashing over him, how he thought he was a goner when he sank to the ocean floor. The deep surrounded me, he says, and weeds were wrapped around my head. But even in that dark, gross place, Jonah remembers God's faithfulness. He promises to turn back, to do what God asked, and to trust him no matter what. It's not just a, get me out of here, prayer, it's a shift in Jonah's heart. He's starting to see that running from God doesn't end well. Meanwhile, the fish is just swimming along, carrying Jonah like some divine Uber driver. God's in control, even of this giant sea creature. Jonah's not calling the shots anymore, he's at the mercy of God's plan. Those 3 days in the fish's belly. They're like a timeout, giving Jonah a chance to rethink his choices and get right with God. By the end, he's ready to listen. And God? He's about to give Jonah a second chance in the most unexpected way. After 3 long days and nights in the fish's belly, something wild happens. God speaks to the fish, and, get this, it listens. The big creature swims to shore and basically barfs Jonah out onto dry land. Picture Jonah, covered in fish slime, sprawled out on the beach, blinking in the sunlight. He's gotta be thinking, I'm alive. For real. God didn't just save him from drowning, he used a fish to deliver him right back to where he needed to be. Talk about a divine course correction. God doesn't waste any time. He comes to Jonah again, same message as before, get up, go to Nineveh, and tell him what I'm gonna tell you. This time, Jonah's not about to argue. He's learned his lesson the hard way, running from God lands you in some pretty fishy situations. So, he dusts himself off, probably takes a quick rinse in the sea, and starts the long trek to Nineveh. No boats, no detours, just Jonah putting one foot in front of the other, heading to the city he tried so hard to avoid. Nineveh's a massive place, so big it takes 3 days to walk across it. Jonah steps into the city, takes a deep breath, and starts preaching, 40 days, and Nineveh's gonna be toast unless you turn things around. It's not exactly a feel-good sermon. He's blunt, straight to the point, telling the people that God's seen their wickedness and judgments coming if they don't change. Jonah's not sugarcoating it, but he's doing what God asked, no questions this time. Now, here's the crazy part, the people of Nineveh actually listen. From the street vendors to the big shots in charge, they hear Jonah's warning and take it seriously. The whole city, thousands of people, starts fasting, putting on sackcloth, think itchy burlap bags, as a sign of repentance. Even the king gets in on it. He steps off his throne, swaps his fancy robes for sackcloth, and sits in ashes, declaring a citywide fast. He issues an order, everybody, pray. Turn from your evil ways, and maybe, just maybe, God'll change his mind and spare us. Jonah's message, powered by God's Spirit, hits like a lightning bolt, and Nineveh's ready to make things right. You'd think Jonah would be thrilled, right? He preaches, Nineveh repents, and God's plan is working out. But here's the twist, Jonah's not happy. Not even a little. See, when God sees Nineveh's turnaround, people praying, fasting, and ditching their wicked ways, he decides to show mercy. He calls off the destruction he'd warned about. The city's spared, and the people get a fresh start. This is exactly what Jonah was afraid of. He didn't want Nineveh to get off the hook, he wanted them to face the music. Jonah storms out of the city, fuming. He finds a spot on a hill overlooking Nineveh and lets God have it. "I knew it," he gripes. "I knew you'd go soft on them. This is why I ran to Tarshish in the first place. You're too merciful, Lord, always ready to forgive. I'd rather die than see these people get a pass." It's like Jonah's throwing a grown man tantrum. He's mad that God's compassion extends to people he can't stand, people he thinks don't deserve it. To cool Jonah off, God causes a plant to sprout up overnight, giving him some shade from the scorching sun. Jonah's all about it, chilling under this leafy canopy, finally feeling a bit of comfort. But then, God sends a worm to chew up the plant, and by morning, it's gone. The sun beats down, a hot wind kicks up, and Jonah's miserable again. He's so mad he says, "Just let me die already." God uses this moment to teach Jonah a lesson. "You're upset about a plant you didn't even grow," God says. "You cared about it just because it made you comfortable. So why shouldn't I care about Nineveh, with its thousands of people who didn't know any better, plus all their animals?" God's point hits hard. His love and mercy aren't just for Jonah or Israel, they're for everyone, even the worst of the worst. Jonah's sitting there, sulking, while God's trying to expand his heart to see the bigger picture. Nineveh's repentance isn't just a win for them, it's a chance for Jonah to understand God's character in a whole new way. So, there's Jonah, sitting on that hill, still grumpy about God's mercy. The story doesn't tell us if he ever comes around, but that's kind of the point. The book of Jonah ends with God's question hanging in the air, "Shouldn't I care about Nineveh?" It's a challenge not just for Jonah but for anyone hearing the story. God's love is bigger than our grudges, bigger than our sense of who's worthy. Nineveh was a city full of people who'd done awful things, but when they turned to God, he met them with grace. That's the heart of the story. Jonah's journey, from running away to preaching in Nineveh, shows us a God who doesn't give up. He could have let Jonah drown or picked another prophet, but he went after him, using a storm, a fish, and even a plant to get through to him. It's a reminder that God's plans don't depend on our cooperation, but he invites us to be part of them anyway. Jonah's stubbornness didn't stop God's mercy from reaching Nineveh, and it didn't stop God from teaching Jonah about compassion. The story's also a gut check for us. How often do we act like Jonah, wanting God to bless the good guys, but not the ones we don't like? Nineveh's turnaround shows that no one's too far gone for God's grace. The king, the people, even the animals got a second chance because they humbled themselves. It's a powerful picture of what happens when we respond to God's call, even if it's through a reluctant messenger like Jonah. In the end, Jonah and the whale isn't just about a guy getting swallowed by a fish. It's about God's relentless love, his patience with stubborn hearts, and his desire to save everyone, no matter how lost they seem. Jonah's story leaves us with a choice: embrace God's big, inclusive mercy or sit on our own hill, sulking about who gets it. As Jonah learned, running from God only takes you so far, but turning back. That's where the real adventure begins.